Come in. You wanted to see me, Chief?
Trace, this case was closed months ago, okay? Why are you still snooping around? Everyone online knows these wheels are no good.
Chief, look, okay, I know these wheels are cheap, alright? But they're lightweight. They don't delaminate. They're robust.
God damn it, Trace. You need to step away from this case. The mayor is not interested in cheap Chinese carbon fiber.
But Chief, okay, listen to me. I've spent a lot of time with these wheels, and I found out that they stay true. They ride well. They brake well.
There's nothing more to learn, Trace. Look. I'm putting you back on the Mavic case with Jenkins. Now those Cosmic Elites, those are some damn fine wheels.
Mavic Elites or not, this is not the last time you'll hear about these cheap Chinese carbon fiber wheels. You can mark my words on that one, Chief.
You go near this case, and it's the last time you'll set foot in this department. Now get the hell out of my office.
Goddamn Maverick. He's gonna get himself killed. Francine, give me the mayor. There's one thing I know about Chase Velo. He won't give up that easy.
Hello and welcome back to another delicious Trace Velo production. My name is Luke. So if you haven't already surmised from the title of this video, this is a follow-up to my deep section carbon rims, the unbranded ones I've got here, which debuted on the channel a few months ago, here. Bing. So if you haven't watched that one, you might want to go and watch it, but it's not completely necessary. So they only cost me about £300, and when I shot that video, I'd done around 400 miles on them. But now, I'm up to 1,751 miles, which is equal to 2,817 kilometers. Yes, 2,817 kilometers. So let's see if I should throw these wheels away or throw myself a party because of how good they are.
So first off, let's have a quick look at the wheels as they're sat now on the bike. So nothing major to point out here, to be honest with you. They look pretty much the same as they did when I first got them out of the box, really. No warping, no delamination to point out, no cracks in the carbon fiber. And also, I haven't replaced any of the spokes. So these spokes are the same spokes that came with them originally. I didn't have to replace any of them, so that's rather good. And I'll show you the back quickly. And a couple of people in the comments have asked me for a free hub sound test, because apparently that's a useful metric. So, have a quick listen. So there you go. Not obnoxiously loud by any means, but loud enough so when you're pulling up to the lights, people know you're not messing around, you mean business. Okay, so this is an important topic. So one of the major criticisms levied against these type of unbranded carbon fiber wheels is that the brake track here is reputedly complete garbage and will wear out super quick or warp and delaminate at the kind of mildest touch of heat. Because as you may recall from my last video, under heavy braking, this area of the brake track here can get up to maybe 200 or 300 degrees C. So it's imperative that the resin used in the construction is stable at these high temperatures. Now, a lot of people criticize these wheels because they would use subpar resin and therefore, they would delaminate. But in my experience, these wheels have been totally fine. So let me bring you in and I'll try and explain. Okay, so this is the front rim and I'll just quickly show you. You can see the basalt brake track is still in really good nick. So there's a slight discoloration to the brake track. It's not glassy like it once was, but it appears to have polished it slightly. And that's really the sum total of the wear on the rim. So I'll bring you around and you should be able to see there are no major grooves or deep gouges in the rim. And if I show you the back, it's much of the same. So here's the back rim. Again, a slight discoloration where the brake pad has been touching the rim, but nothing major at all really to report. So if I bring you down, yeah, there you go. You can really see there, this gray area, that's exactly where the brake pad has been touching the rim. and you should be able to see, yeah, no major grooves. One other thing to note is that the rim depth here is still completely uniform. So the sum total of the damage is this slight discoloration here. And after 1,700 miles, I think that's pretty damn good.
Okay, so what brake pads have I been using on these rims? And needless to say, the brake pads chosen were supremely cheap. So I didn't, for example, use SwissStop Flash Pros. For those of you that don't know, SwissStop produce some carbon-specific brake pads that everyone raves about, but they cost 40 quid for a set of 4. That's £10 each, which is a bit crazy in my opinion. So what I've been using, I've used these. These are a set of 4 carbon-specific brake pads by a company called Lifeline, and they'll set you back £5. But I wouldn't really recommend these because I found that if you've done a ride with some quite long descents, these pads tend to char quite easily. So they don't deal with the heat very well. And when you want to ride them again, you'll need to kind of take some sandpaper to them to take off the charring. I would, however, recommend these. So these are a set of carbon-specific brake pads again by a company called Prime. Now Prime make their own carbon rims, and these are the brake pads that they supply with those rims, but you can buy them separately. And these cost £6 for a set of 4, which is super reasonable. They deal with the heat really well and they brake really well as well. And they're quite durable too. But one thing I wasn't really prepared for is when you set up the brake pads on these, I set them up so both brake pads contacted the rim flat at the same time. And if you set them up like that, the squealing noise you get in heavy braking is honestly horrendous. But if you tow the brake pads in at the front, just a couple of degrees, it goes from the kind of death cries of a child to a really nice pleasant whizzing sound as you brake, just like a anyway, as we're talking braking, let me throw up some Strava segments that I've done on these rims, just so you can get an idea of some of the descents that I've been down. Okay, cool. So first up, this was a ride I did back in April of this year, and it's around Dartmoor National Park, around the moors. Specifically, the kind of major landmark around this area that people are most familiar with is a landmark called Haytor, and this particular route goes around it. So yeah, it's a relatively long ride, I guess. What are we looking at? 63 miles, there it is, 63 miles. And this was the first time I'd kind of taken these wheels out. So I'd got them in March, maybe the month before, and I'd ridden them a couple of times, but this was the first big test of these wheels to check if they were up to snuff, basically. So there are a lot of descents, but the one I want to concentrate on is this road down here. This is the road back down through Ashburton. This is quite a famous descent, or a climb if you do it the other way. But I'm showing you the descent here, just over 1,000 foot straight down, and that's within about 3 to 4 miles as well. So it's quite steep. So you can see here, this is my speed as I'm going down the descent, and you can see I'm up to kind of 30. I'm on the brakes, back down to 14. I was quite cautious, admittedly, as this was the first outing with these wheels, and this was the first time I was really putting some heat into the rims with the braking, and you can see there from like 30 miles an hour back down to kind of nothing really. But yeah, it was my first outing. I was quite cautious, but they actually performed really, really well. So it gave me a lot of confidence that this was actually quite a good product. Okay, so this was the next big trip out with my wheels, and it was to the island of Mallorca, which is just off the coast of Spain, and it is a bit of a cycling mecca. So I was really, really pleased to get out there. Anyway, this is one of the more famous routes on the island, and it is called the Cap de Formentor. Basically, it's a route out along the spit of land which ends at a lighthouse there, and you work your way back. It's absolutely spectacular. For those of you that have gone will know. But anyway, you can see here that we've got some big climbs. So we start at sea level, we get up to kind of 700 feet and then straight back down. So this was another really good test for these wheels. And I'll show you again my speed. So you can see on the first ascent, relatively slow on the climb. And then I was a little bit cautious on the descent still. So I was kind of modulating my speed, kind of staying on the brakes. But you can really see it on the tail end here. So this is my last ascent and then last descent. And you can see I'm relatively slow on the ascent, but then I hit the apex of the hill and I'm cruising back down. So we hit 35 miles an hour 36, 37, straight back down to nothing. So at this point, I'm really putting some heat into these rims. And you got to remember as well, this is nearly summertime in Spain, so it's quite hot as is, so putting a lot of heat into these rims. And again, they perform perfectly, so no problems at all. Okay, so this is the last one I'm going to show you, and again, it was a ride in Mallorca. So I got a few rides in while I was there, and they were all amazing. But this one was probably one of my favorites, actually. So I want to show you this particular segment here, and it was basically a ride up the side of a mountain and then back down the other side. So you can see the elevation goes up to kind of, 1,600 feet, and then almost back down to sea level there. So it was actually pretty spectacular. So I'll quickly show you. You can see on the way up here, my speed was pretty low, kind of doing the climb, taking some nice pictures because the scenery was amazing. But then on the way down, which is down the other side, down this side here, my speed was up and down all the way. So really, again, putting some heat into those brakes. So you can see, if I show you, the route down, it was super windy. So the route went back and forth. The roads kind of really snaked down the side of this mountain. So again, speed was up, back down, up, back down, up, back down. So yeah, building up the speed, straight back down on the brakes. So one of the perfect ways to kind of build up heat in those rims. And again, well, this is a long way as well. So this is a really long descent. So what are we talking? Kind of 4 miles, 5 miles nearly, just constantly kind of up and back on the brakes. So it was a really good test of these wheels. And by this point, I had total confidence in them, and they performed spectacularly. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully that will give you some idea of some of the descents I've been on and some of the kind of punishment that I've put these wheels through. So a quick word of warning. I mentioned many times that these rims heat up under heavy braking. I made the mistake of touching them after that descent in Mallorca I've just showed you. I burnt my fingers and swore out loud. I did this in front of a professional cycling team waiting at the bottom of the descent. Let me just tell you, it makes you look incredibly competent. So can recommend. Pro tips. Almost non-existent. Next. No, but in all seriousness, braking performance in the wet with these rims, it is awful. I mean, I knew carbon rims were notoriously bad, and these ones here are no exception. So the smooth kind of glass-like braking surface on the rim, it just doesn't offer any grab in the wet. So once kind of moisture gets between the brake pad and the rim, your braking performance just goes out the window. In the dry, these perform incredibly well. So I'm talking as good, if not better, than my aluminium rims. But in the rain, in the wet, just forget about it. So in terms of weatherproofing for these rims, this is what I said on the topic in the last video. And if you're going to be riding these kind of cheaper hubs in the rain, either take very good care to dry them out when you finish your ride, or you'll just end up having to replace the bearings a little more often. And after a few months riding these wheels, I can safely say that is it. It's good advice I gave. I mean, I didn't take the advice myself, and I left these wheels wet overnight, and then water crept into the bearings and I had to replace them. But in terms of the advice itself, I stand by it. It's solid advice.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
So I try and avoid riding these wheels in the rain wherever possible, purely because the wet weather braking performance is so atrocious. But a couple of weeks ago, I got caught in a sudden downpour while I was out riding, and I didn't dry the wheels out properly overnight, and water managed to kind of creep its way into the rear hub. And then after a few more rides, the bearings in the back were completely knackered. Incidentally, the bearings in the front have been completely fine. It's just the ones at the back that got ruined. So I actually ended up replacing the free hub in the back, which wasn't a massive deal because it was the same one that came with the set of wheels, and I'd done about 1,600 miles on it. So the cassette bite on that free hub was quite bad. But it's worth noting, if you have these rims or you ride wheels with either Novatec or Powerway hubs, then the wet weather proofing, the waterproofing is not particularly strong. So if you do ride them in the wet, just keep an eye on them. So yeah, top tip for you there.
So just to give you an idea of what the free hub looked like after I'd done 1,600 or so miles on it, this is what I replaced. So this is the aluminium free hub that you use on these Novatec hubs here. And you can see that the cassette has bitten into it quite badly. I mean, I could have maybe got another 200 or so miles out of it, but I actually end up swapping out the cassette here on these set of wheels quite often, depending on the kind of gradient that I'm riding on. And when you have cassette bite like this, it essentially means you have to hammer the cassette off the free hub each time, which is not a particularly good thing to be doing. So I ended up replacing it. A new aluminium free hub like this costs about 25 quid, so it's not a massive issue. And after 1600 miles or so, I don't think that's too bad.
So regarding wheel trueness, this is what I said on the topic in the last video. So from what I read, the wheels would be fine for the first few rides, but after you'd put a few miles on them, they would go out of true. So they would no longer track straight and they would kind of like wobble from side to side. So I've had to adjust the spoke tension on the rear wheel on 2 occasions. The front I've not had to touch. The spokes are the same tension they were out of the box and it still runs dead true. But the rear I've adjusted twice, once after about 500 miles and the second was after I got the bike back from my trip to Mallorca, and that could have been a case of kind of rough handling at the airport because I packed this whole setup, I packed it away in a bike box to get it there and back, so it could have had something to do with that. But regardless, on both those occasions, the rear wheel was only out by less than 2 millimeters. So yeah, not a big deal. And I used this little spoke tool here to change the tension. And what you do is you basically have to tweak these spoke nipples by about 1 turn, maybe half a turn on 2 or 3 of the spokes to bring the wheel back into line. But I mean, the last time I touched that rear wheel was about 700 miles ago and it's still dead true. So I think it's settled in quite nicely. But I mean, what, 2 small adjustments after 1700 miles is not too bad in my book, especially considering I commute with these wheels like at least 2 or 3 times a week. And that means going over quite kind of crummy, rutted London roads, kind of jumping off curbs and things. So yeah, I think these have performed fantastically considering what I've put them through. One more thing to mention, and it's something I've come across maybe once or twice, and that is some local bike shops can get a little bit funny about servicing replica carbon parts. So I met up with a cycle buddy of mine, Leslie, who'd bought himself exactly the same wheels as these really, from the same eBay seller. And he took them down to his local bike shop to get some new tyres fitted. Now allegedly, they tried 2 different sets of tyres, neither of which fitted because the rims were too small. They were apparently the wrong diameter. I was a bit skeptical, so I went down to see him myself and managed to fit a completely new set of tyres on with absolutely no problem at all. So I don't really know what the issue was, but yeah, it's something to bear in mind, and that is, yeah, some local bike shops do get a bit funny about taking care of these parts for you. Right, so lastly, quite a few people have asked me for some ride-along footage to see what these wheels look like in motion while I'm on the bike. So I strapped the old GoPro to the handlebars up here, and I also had some drone footage which I took a few weeks back, so I'll throw that in there as well. Anyway, yeah, enjoy. Okay, so as you may be able to tell, I really like these wheels. I paid £300 for them, and I think that's incredible value considering how well they've performed. They brake well, they ride well, they look fantastic. Overall, super duper happy with the package.
And for all the people about to comment, I've left the seller I used and some key stats around the wheels, like weight, in the video description.
Anyway, that's all for now. So subscribe if you like stuff like this. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And if you've got any questions or any comments about these wheels here or carbon wheels in general, throw them down in the comments below and I'll try to get back to as many of you as I can. Anyway, that's all for now. So I'll see you guys next time.
Francine,
Give me the mayor.